Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Human Trafficking Podcast, the podcast where we, shed light on an often hidden issue right here in our own backyard in BloNo.
That's right, Abby. I'm Zia, and with Abby here today, we're going to dive into some really critical updates and insights about human trafficking in McLean County for 2025. It's pretty eye-opening, actually.
Yeah, it really is. And, before we get into the local stuff, I think it's important to just quickly touch on what human trafficking actually is, because I think a lot of people might not fully grasp the definition.
Absolutely, Abby. The American Nurses Association, for instance, they identify it as a health issue, which is interesting, right? They say it's an often hidden example of violating human rights, and it happens when vulnerable people are exploited in, sex industries or labor markets. It's pretty broad.
Yeah, it's definitely more widespread than people think. And speaking of widespread, let's talk about some of the recent efforts right here in McLean County. There was a pretty significant sting operation back in January, wasn't there?
Oh, for sure. So back on January 8th and 9th, 2025, there was this key sting operation. It was a joint effort involving the Illinois State Police, the Bloomington PD, and the McLean County State's Attorney. And, the result was pretty stark. 6 men arrested for soliciting sex with minors.
Wow, that's really something. And, some of the names, just to mention a few, you had Nathan J. Hansen, David B. Tarrant, Steve Adma, Khalid M. Farah, Larry M. Miller, and Michael A. Morris. And, some of them are facing multiple felony counts, grooming charges, even drug possession.
Yeah, and just to add to that, 5 of them were actually released with conditions, but Michael A. Morris, he's still in custody, which, you can imagine is part of this larger, what they call a multifaceted suppression effort against sex trafficking.
Which, it's good that they're taking steps. And then, following that up, there was also a really important rescue operation that happened in April, right?
Yeah, in April, specifically April 23rd, 2025, there was a rescue at a massage spa in Normal. Again, ISP Task Force 6 and Normal PD were involved. And, the outcome was positive. Thankfully, a trafficking victim was rescued from a local spa and actually placed into care.
That's so important. And it wasn't just the rescue, but also the follow-up, right? They provided medical support, housing, legal aid, and other recovery resources, which is, crucial for these survivors.
Absolutely. It's a holistic approach, which is what we need. And speaking of which, there's also been some policy changes in response, locally.
Yeah, so in June of 2025, the Bloomington Council, they actually proposed some new rules for massage parlors, including things like licensing fees, background checks, and inspections, all aimed at, curbing trafficking-linked businesses, which is a very proactive step.
Definitely. And I think it's important for our listeners to understand, the broader picture too, right? Illinois, isn't immune to this. We actually rank 11th in the U.S. for trafficking.
Yeah, it's a pretty high ranking. And in 2020, there were, 252 reported cases, with sex trafficking being the most common. And, the top hotspots, if you're curious, are Chicago, Rockford, Peoria, and Champaign.
Yeah, it's everywhere, unfortunately. And I guess, for our listeners, it's also important to know some of the warning signs. Things like bruising, anxiety, fear, just poor overall conditions.
Or, malnourishment, lack of sleep, maybe even a fear of being touched, or just being really apprehensive to talk to you. And often you'll see overcrowded, unsanitary, or unsafe living environments.
Yeah, and if you see anything or suspect anything, it's really important to report it. You can call the national hotline at 1-888-373-7888 or even text them at 233-733.
And there's also, the ISP Crime Tips email, which is ispcrimetips@illinois.gov. And locally, if you need resources, there's the Children's Advocacy Center, Catalyst Ministries, Arnold Health Services, and Counseling and Consultation Services. All great local spots.
Yeah, so, in summary, McLean County has really made significant progress in early 2025 with those January arrests, the April victim recovery, and then those June legislative proposals targeting risk venues.
Yeah, it's an ongoing effort for sure, involving enforcement, survivor support, and, policy reform.
Absolutely. And that's all for this episode of BloNo Human Trafficking. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Stay safe.